The first part of the process for mixing a croissant is to get all of your ingredients into the bowl. In the bowl already we have the sponge, we have the milk, the water, all the dry ingredients, and the butter. We're going to start with 8 minutes on speed 1 and 8 minutes on speed 2. Mix it until it's nice and developed and you can pull a window pane. And then we're going to get it onto the table and into bins to ferment. It's a good idea during speed 1 incorporation to turn on the reverse in the mixer to help incorporate all the dry ingredients. So we're going to do that now for a couple minutes. At this stage, about halfway through the mix, we'll go ahead and scrape down the sides of the bowl to make sure we get all of our ingredients incorporated. We get to get the breaker bar on the top of the hook as well. This is an instance where we've mixed the full 8 minutes, but we're actually going to add time because of the batch size. In a small batch like this, where you're really only mixing half the time, because the other half, the bowl is turning the dough back into the hook, so there's no contact for a lot of it. Usually you'll have to add a little bit of mix time. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and check development. Press it, and we're going to gently stretch it, turn it, gently stretch it, to see if we can pull a nice, clear window pane. That'll tell us that we're fully developed on the gluten and ready to go. That's great. And then when you pop it with your finger, it pulls away like that, and there's a little bit of a shaggy edge. That's a good sign. If it's super smooth, you've developed kind of every last bit of gluten in the dough. And it can get a little tricky as it starts to degrade through the fermentation. So this is a great place for us to be. This is exactly what you want to look for. Now we'll go ahead and pull it out of the bowl and onto the table. Okay, now that we've got our dough on our bench, let's take the temperature and then go ahead and divide it. Today we're at 85.4 degrees. So go ahead and note that in our mix log. We're gonna get to work. We're gonna divide at 4 kilos. You wanna move through this process quickly. If you let the dough start to ferment on the table or in the bowl, it's gonna start to fight you. It's gonna be super elastic, and it's gonna start the dough down a path we really don't want it to go to. So we're gonna work fast, efficient, and we're gonna keep the dough on our schedule. We're going to keep working from the first dough we touch to the last dough, right? So we don't divide the last one and then shape that one and wait to get to the first one. We keep everything in the same order. So you're going to flatten it down. You're going to fold it so it's wider at the top and more narrow at the bottom. And then you're going to push up and bring your hands back down. Stretch along this and keep it nice and smooth. So we're going to do that all the way up. So we have a piece that looks like this. And then you'll transfer that into a lightly oiled bin. Move that onto a rack, and then we're going to cover it in plastic. You want your dough to be on the table for less than 5 minutes. Now we'll get it on a rack and let it ferment until it's doubled in size. All right, our croissants have finished fermenting. What you're looking for at this stage is them to be nice and tall over the bucket, but not touching, or barely touching if they are. Sometimes you'll see them fully together, connected, they'll be even taller, they'll be connected up until this part. That's overproofed, that's over fermented, and that's gonna cause us a lot of issues down the line. So this is exactly the fermentation stage you're looking for. After this point, you're gonna keep the dough as cold as you can until we go into the proof box. Super important. So from this stage, you're gonna go ahead and turn it out on the sheeter. Remove our bucket. We're gonna use these Teflon sheets on sheet pans. So what I'm gonna do is take one of these doughs, I'm gonna pop it up onto the guard here and let it rest while I sheet out the other one. And at this stage, I'm gonna press it down to degas. What I'm trying to do is get it as wide as the sheet pan. And then I only have to sheet it lengthwise. So you see I pressed it down like that. Now I'm going to turn it a quarter turn. Sprinkle it with a little bit of flour. And I'm going to open up the sheeter and set it. It should only take 2 to 3 passes. You want to get it somewhere around 12 millimeters. And we're going to transfer it onto our Teflon sheet. We're going to widen it out, paying particular attention to the corners, right? It's natural for the dough at this stage to round the corners in. You want to keep them as square as possible. It's going to make your life easier, and it's going to improve your yield on croissants. Cool, once we've got it pressed out like that, take another Teflon sheet on top, And then we're gonna stack another sheet pan and do our other dough. We'll get you a better angle on that one. So, pressing out this one. Right, and maybe even grab the corners again like this. Once it's pressed out, about the width of my sheet pan, turn it to the side, and I'll send it through the sheet. It should only take 2 passes, and then you can transfer it right over. Super important at this stage that you're working quickly and efficiently for your dough more than anything else. If you're working slow and you start your first dough at that stage, by the time you get to the last ones, they'll be over fermented. And then you're gonna have uneven product across your line. So super important you work fast and keep these cold. As soon as I've got 2 to 4 done here, depending on how fast I'm working, I'm gonna move them into the freezer, spaced out and separated so they don't hold on to heat in the middle. All right, our dough has now chilled and it's time to laminate. I pulled out my butter a few minutes ago, maybe 5 to 10. You don't want this getting too soft. The key to successful lamination is temperature. And it's temperature because of how temperature affects texture of dough and butter. Essentially, you want everything as cold as you can get it without it cracking. So, our butter, for example, I could push in with my thumb and make a little print. I definitely could not do that with my pinky. And I can give it a little flex here. Right? When I push in with my thumb, when I give it pressure, it moves. It doesn't crack, it moves. That is exactly the place we want it to be. So we'll go ahead and open these up. And we'll place them onto our sill pad. Now, these particular sheets are a little bit less than perfect squares. So they're wider here and a little bit more narrow here. We're going to overlap the narrow ends and leave the wide ends on the outside. That means when they press together, we'll have a little bit of an advantage because the narrowest parts will be overlapping and will get wider, and the wider parts won't be overlapping and should stay about the same size. So we'll go ahead and put our second sill pad on the top. And then the loud part. We're going to hit the seam to seal it together. And then we're going to run the whole thing through this way. It's already the length we want it. We just want to get it a little bit wider. You're shooting for it to fill the inside of the sill pad, but not go to the green border. So this is about the size we want. You can see it hasn't gone to the green border here, but it has gone past over here. So if we were to recenter our sill pad, we would just hit the edges here, which is perfect. You'll notice the shape is irregular. Perfectly normal. What you're going to want to do is trim it. So we'll take the bench scraper here, we'll cut off this wide part, and we'll put that in a more narrow spot and work it in. The goal is to work quickly so we maintain temperature and to keep everything nice and square. we're already pretty square on this side, but we'll just take off this little bit here. We'll work it into this top one. Cool. Now we'll work to here so that we've got a nice square butter block, which is the first step to a nice square loaf of dough. So we'll take this and set it up here. And I'll move my dough onto the sheeter. Now, for the dough, you're looking for the same thing. You're looking for a nice square shape, corners crisp, and you're looking for the texture to be firm without cracking. So right over here is the firmest part of my dough. It's the place in the freezer where it was the coldest. I can still bend it. See, I got that little bit of a crack here. That's the very coldest spot, and that's the very edge of the temperature. So that's actually a good thing. So we'll work it a little bit just to warm that spot up. We'll return to square. We're going to square our ends a little bit. We're going to do that just by rolling directly into the corner. Some smacks. Now, these won't be exactly the same size, but we'll get close. Put them on top of each other and then we'll fix it. So, let's take our butter, move it to the top of our dough. See where we're at. Let's take our other piece of dough onto the sheeter, fix that. Do the same thing with this. Just reinforce the corner. And we'll check the cold spots for texture. Okay, so I press. It takes a little bit of pressure to get a nice solid holder. You shouldn't be able to push through it with your pinky. It's kind of one of the rules of thumb I like to use. If you can, it's too soft, or you have the world's strongest fingers. So next we'll take this, flip it over on top, and now we'll just stretch these to cover the butter. We want to get exactly to the edge, no further. Now let's flip it, and do the same. Cool. We're now prepared to laminate. This part we want to go as fast as we can, while maintaining control, obviously, because we want the temperature to stay nice and cool. So, open our sheeter up and start sending it. You want to go to 4 times as long as it is wide. That's going to give us a square when we go to hold it up. It's normal to have this little bit of a round, especially on the first turn. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut off the belly of it, the main part here, and then we're going to piece it into the corners to have perfect layers of dough and butter in all places, but to minimize scrap. So we'll cut here. I'll cut this off. And then we'll place this in here, cut up like this, place this down here, cut over like this. And you can see we've got a little bit of scrap here. We're going to look at that on the other side. And we've got dough and butter in all spots here. So we'll fold that into the middle. Bring our dough the rest of the way. Now we'll do the same on this side. takes a couple of cuts, that's okay. We're going to use our same scraps from the other side as long as we still have good pieces that have even layers of dough and butter. Press those in there, cut off nice and square here. You gather up our scrap. I'm going to lift this up with our little scrap pieces. Meet in the middle here. You want to be as even as you can while maintaining speed. Right? Sight the middle, make sure you're not way off on one side or the other. Way over. What we're going to do is take our rolling pin. We're going to press down here. That'll reinforce where it's brought together, and it'll also leave us a little bit thinner of a piece when we go to fold it. And that'll help keep it more square. So I'm also going to press down on the corners. Ensure that they're adhered to each other. Not it. Everything a couple of taps. Ensure it stays square. Maybe I'll roll a corner out if I feel like one of them is starting to be. And then I'm going to send it through just to reinforce this layer, right? So it's sheeted a little bit longer. We'll go ahead. Hold on. Cool. Now at this stage, we're going to really take care of our square. So we'll push down here. We'll open up this side of the lamination with a knife. That'll release a lot of the tension in here. We'll also hit the corners over here. Those are the spots that carry the most tension. Now I'll roll into the corners again, so it's nice and square. Turn it 90 degrees. Shoot it down again. Okay, so you can see here, we're once again a little out of square. Not as bad as we were last time. I'm just going to take this section of dough here and roll it that way to give us a little bit of improvement. A lot of that is not necessarily the amount of dough and butter in there, it's just tension, right? So we'll cut again the same way. Cut a little bit of the belly out here. We'll trim our corner. We'll piece in the lamination. And reinforce that a little bit. Go back into the middle. Trim the belly again. This one's a little worse in the round, right? So we're going to have to trim just a little bit more. Place it here. And then we'll trim down. Scraps again, put on the side. Fold up and in the middle. can see I'm a little bit off here, so I'm going to correct my placement. And then press down to reinforce. I'm working my corners a little bit. I'll go ahead and open them up. Feel I didn't quite get that one. Send it back through this way. Reinforce our seam. This up. Roll it to there. Cool. It's only about as wide as a sheet pin, so now we're going to turn it 90 degrees. We've got all of our turns in now. Our dough is still pretty cold. All of our steps here have kept it pretty square, which is great. Now what we're going to do is just sheet it down to sub 15. I like to go between 12 and 15 millimeters so that when we go into the freezer, it freezes fast and it thaws fast. If you go super thick, if we left it like this, we would start fermenting and proofing the inside while the top layer froze, and we'd shatter all of our layers of butter from the pressure of that inside. That's gonna not only ruin our lamination, but also start to over ferment our dough, start to gas that out. So we're just gonna sheet it down to that point. You might start to feel it getting a little more elastic at this point. We've been working it a lot, stretching it out a ton, and it's natural for the dough to recoil a little bit. It shouldn't be too bad. If it is, that means you might have under fermented it a little bit or mixed it a little bit too strong. But we're looking great here. You also want to go slower as time goes by. As you get to the end of this process, you can't jump down by 5 millimeters at a time anymore the way you could in the beginning, because the dough can't handle that kind of pressure. It's got too much elasticity in it, and it will tear if you do that. So as you go this final thing, walk it down just by a couple millimeters at a time. Once we get here, put it like this. I'm going to correct the square one more time. I can see down here it's kind of further out on this side and not as far on here. So I'll just roll it out. Maybe I'll do the same at the very top here. Smack it in a little bit. Roll my corner. In this shape, it's going to have plenty of time to relax. So we're really doing ourselves a service by making it nice and square here. That's going to keep our yield high when we go to sheet our final product. Cool. Last thing we're going to do, we're going to cut it in half. Check out our lamination. Looks good. We're going to see a couple of little folds here, right? Where there's just a little bit more dough than butter, but that's pretty natural. We could get rid of those if we increase the strap amount. The effect they have in the final product is not worth it for that. And you notice they're also in the sides, so they're going to be trimmed when we go to sheet the final croissant. So you're going to lose a lot of that anyway, and you're going to have this near perfect lamination in the middle. So now we're going to go ahead and move this back to sheet pan with plastic wrap. And then we'll transfer it into the freezer.